Hello, I'm Melody Colbert-Keene. I'm the owner of Me's Place Soul Food Kitchen in Joplin, Missouri. I'm also the former mayor of Joplin, Missouri, and a council member that just recently retired after 14 years. So while I may not be directly in the HR, I really kind of am because I've employed possibly 50,000 people of a city. So I'm excited to share with you a few things that hopefully will help you in your professional career and to help you be the best in workforce development that you can be. People are our greatest asset, and when we see them for who they are and what they have to offer, I think that gives us the best chance to not only be a great asset for our company, but to help develop them into the best leaders that they can be. Because the key thing that I see is when we develop people to strengthen them in their areas of greatness, it also strengthens us as directors and as career leaders in our areas. So working together is what it takes to make a great company. So thank you for joining my sessions and listening to them, and I look forward to any questions you may have at the end, and I'll see you then. Unmasking bias in the workplace, how to recruit and engage a multicultural team. That is very important because no one sector of people are the totality of making a corporation or a company work. At one point, you just have to take off the mask. And that's what we're going to talk about today is a few things about how do you take off the mask in the workplace. And to say, what do we mean when we say take off your mask? And in this day and age, we're not talking about COVID and the mask that everybody's having to wear or not wear, whichever one you're choosing to do. But that's a subject for another topic. But here we're talking about we're talking about the implied removal of a said piece that covers your face. Agreed? Because that's kind of what a mask is. So how does that fit into human resources world, you may ask? Well, after all, you are the ones that see the people, talk to the people, and decide if they pass the test worthy of your company's employment, right? What mask can they possibly have on that you are not aware of? And you would be correct in asking this question. Imagine being the only person in your office that looks different, speaks different, or whatever the difference may be. Now, imagine no one ever having a conversation with you. They never invite you to lunch. They never include you in discussions or ask for your input. Your coworkers and your management pretty much just leave you alone to do your work. So what do? You do your work and go home. And there's weeks of this on repeat. Then one day at a staff meeting, when management is seeking ideas and input from the team for an upcoming project, you know those meetings that you love to go to and secretly hate to go to and kind of secretly rush for them to be over. Yeah, those are the meetings I'm talking about. Well, someone mentions that they heard that you suggested a great idea at a networking function. That idea was widely discussed, it was accepted, and successfully implemented. Then management takes notice, asks you to brainstorm for some projects, and then suddenly you're the go-to person for many projects that couldn't get off the ground before. And everybody wants to chat with you about the ideas. Has that ever happened to you? And is this an example of what's happening in today's workplace? Absolutely it is. It occurs more often than it is reported or recorded because nobody wants to be the one to mention things that may suggest a need for change. This does not make for an engaged or a productive workforce. So when I talk about mask, the mask I'm referring to is the mask that you, as the HR rep, may have on, the filter you may be wearing. These are the filters that are being used every time a potential new hire is encountered. Now, all y'all don't look at me crazy and say, well, she can't be talking about me, and look in the air, looking off like this, like, now what is she talking about? I don't use a filter when I talk to people. I just go off what the people tell me, nothing more and nothing less. Well, let me ask you, do you really do that every single time? Or are you one of the many people who demonstrate a subconscious bias when it comes to who you talk to, or how much attention you pay to the person, or if they are worthy even of your time? What do you think when you see a person that's not the same hue as you, or the same sex, or maybe just doesn't look as neat as you? Do you instantly think of how hard the communication is going to be? Or maybe crosses your mind mentally thinking of how much work time they're going to miss? Now remember, we're still talking about just based off what they look like. And let me say, in fair defense of everybody, this is part of your job, to select the best representatives for your company that you can, and to select those who will do the best job. So that in itself requires some type of filter, correct? Correct. But people shouldn't be filtered because of what they look like to be accepted, or to be seen as worthy of your time in the next step. You see, the filters I'm talking about are the deep-rooted ones, the ones you may not even think about. Those that are shaped by the media, or by the stories you've heard through your workplaces, or even stories you've shared or even heard at home and discussed with your friends. Those stories that make you think twice about hiring someone who doesn't look, think, or act like you do. Those stories that are shared in private conversation or with your family. The stories that stick in your subconscious and move to the front when you're facing a person that looks or closely resembles what you have been fed. And I'm talking about those instances where the media, where the media portrays a certain class of people as an unpopular statistic, and you mentally hold on to that perception and subconsciously apply the stereotype to that person that you're talking to. The point that I'm trying to make is there are subconscious biases that we all hold on to, whether we admit it. I don't even know what's going on with my throat. Whether we admit it or not. And they affect the way we perform our day-to-day duties. Every time we interact with people who look, think, or appear different than what we are used to dealing with. Now, listen to me say this. It doesn't make you a bad person. So nobody needs to get upset. Nobody needs to get defensive or tune out or to start thinking you're a bad person. On the contrary, I want you to think about your biases, to really think about them. Let them come to the forefront of your mind and really center on what you think, how it makes you feel, and how you act when faced with someone that's different than you. How do you react when a person doesn't demonstrate relatable or likable qualities based on your ideas? Not anyone else's, based on your ideas. How do you feel? Do you get a flush of heat? You know, your face gets all red and you kind of start sweating in your armpits and things. Or does your heart beat faster, which causes that heat to rise even more? Or maybe you're not able to hold eye contact And I know that sounds strange being HR professionals because that's one of the main things that's ingrained is eye contact, eye contact. But maybe that person sitting in front of you is kind of throwing that eye contact off and you're like looking off, looking everywhere except at them. And maybe you have a zone out moment because you've already made up your mind about that type of person. Or could it be that you just really don't know what to say? And that's very fair and valid. Now, why I'm saying this, you don't have to tell me. You don't have to answer me. But I bet I've hit on a few examples that somebody has experienced at least one time. Not all the time, but at least one time. And just didn't know what to do with that feeling. And like I said before, it doesn't make you a bad person. We've all done it. We've all experienced that at some time. The problem comes when we don't do anything about it. And those feelings, those thoughts, those perceptions that cloud our judgment and affect our ability to clearly see the person for who they are, not for who we think they may be. We apply filters. That is when you're applying a filter. And as I mentioned earlier, filters aren't a bad thing in and of themselves. We have to have some sort of ability to distinguish a potentially good fit for the company versus continually hiring a bad one, because then your job wouldn't last too long, right? Right. So how do we separate those two? Well, I'm glad you asked. You can start by asking yourself a few questions or setting up a few guidelines when dealing with a potential new hire. Like number one, if I had nothing but the person's appearance to go on, would I hire them? Why or why not? You can take a few minutes to answer that question. And number two, what level of comfort do I feel when I see certain names on the application and why? And I want you to dig for that. I want you to say, well, that hasn't happened to me. But I want you to really think, does that pertain to you really? You see a name or you see something like that and you say, I've already got an idea of who that person may be. And like I said previously, that's shaped by media, that's shaped by conversations you have, that's shaped by things that are in your circle of influence. And I'm saying again, it doesn't make you a bad person. But if you're not honest with yourself that you experience these things, then how do we ever get past it? How do we ever grow? And how do we ever keep this from happening? Number three, am I substituting charisma for character? Because let's face it, we can get some people who can be very charismatic. They can give you or sell you the ice cubes in Alaska. They can sell you sunshine and hell. Oh man, I don't know if I can say that on here or not. Hey, we're all adults. And if not, we'll figure out a way to bleep it. But there's charisma. There's such a thing as charisma versus character. And you need to be able to distinguish between those two. Because you want somebody with good character, not just good charisma. And number four, what do I do to engage a new hire into the work atmosphere? And when you're saying I, you take that question to heart. What do you do to engage somebody who's new with your company into the workplace environment? How do you make them feel welcome? And hopefully, some of these things that I've mentioned will get you to thinking of possible missed opportunities by not having an inclusive work culture. Look at your current workplaces now. Are there employees of diverse cultures, gender, educational and professional backgrounds? Are these people represented in your company? Are they in supervisory or executive roles where they can help shape diverse policies? Or are they status quo? Or are they entry level and never seem to be able to move up? Those are things that you need to look at and see, do we have a diverse representation? As a company leader, part of your responsibility is to assist the employees to acclimate to the work culture. You don't just hire them and say you're on your own now. Get out there and make it happen. Well, yeah, you have a lot of people that are self-starters, but there's nothing wrong with some common courtesy in the workplace and being genuinely kind and speaking and ask how someone is doing. Do you have coffee with them? Do you have lunch? Or do you stop by to learn more about them? Do you even introduce them to other coworkers? Or have you taken the time to learn of hobbies or skills that could be of an asset to your company? They may have some hidden talents that you know nothing of because no one is bothering to speak to those people or to speak to a new hire that may be a bit different. Take that time to engage them. Sometimes all it takes is a simple conversation to open the door to the possibilities. Don't let implicit biases limit your sight or vision. Just like one ingredient doesn't make a dish, you have to add seasoning or other foods to get it to taste right. And I threw that in there because remember, I told you I own a Me's Place soul food restaurant. So I would be a perfectly boring, not frequented place if I just had one dish with no seasoning, nothing was added to it. Same as in your hiring. The same goes for diversifying your workforce. It takes many different minds, ideas, and viewpoints to make a productive workforce. All of those ideas don't come from one group of people. It comes from an expanse of people, of varying cultures, of varying looks. Those people bring different ideas. So if you want to increase your company output, you need to increase your company's input. And when I say input of what it looks like, input of ideas, create something that is varying, not something that's just the same, because no one wants to see the same or hear the same at all times. And a thing we need to ask ourselves is, what are filters used for? And you think of filters and you think, okay, it's used to sift through and keep the bad out but collect the good. And so a filter being used in the workplace per se could be to filter out the less desirable hires or potential candidates for this funneling of the good ones per se. But what is good and what is less desirable, and whose eyes are we looking at? Whose filter are we using to make that judgment? Because sometimes you filter and you need what you think is the less desirable product, and you need that to make your actual good product. Think of the filter that everybody's been using here recently, selfie filters that we use. And you think, oh, it smooths out my complexion, it does this, it puts me in a place that's tropical or whatever background or whatever perceived dysformity, whatever that you're perceiving that this filter helps you to look like. So just look at those, for instance. Why do we use those? Well, because we want to look better, or because we don't want our blemishes to show, or we don't want this. So when you apply that and use that filter, you're getting this image that's not real. And that's what you need to get away from. If we're not allowing the real person to show through, or if we're not allowing our real self to show through when we're speaking to people, how are we getting the best quality, or how are we getting true quality? We're getting a filtered product, or we're using a filter so we can see what we want to see. We want to see that image of, this is what I want it to look like. This is the perfection I want to see. We can't use filters. We cannot use filters. We have to have the real the real everyday person. I mean, everybody wants to have a blemish-free face, or their hair just perfect, or whatever that you use the filter for. But when all that comes off and when they see the real you, what are they really seeing? Now, what do they believe? Which picture do you believe? Just like when you're hiring somebody, you've used this filter to get this perfect person, and what you filtered out is not realistic. So what you're getting is an image of a distorted reality. Filters give you a distorted reality. And if you are dealing with a distorted reality in the workplace, then you're not getting the input or the output that your company could be producing. What you're getting is an image, or there's a word out there, and you guys are HR professionals, so you could actually help me with this word because it's not coming to my mind right now. But and I know all you guys are sitting there going, this, and this, and you are right. So what you're getting is this distorted reality, and you're shortchanging or limiting yourself on potential realness, I guess is a way to say it, potential realness in place of fake or filtered or mainstream, or that charisma I was talking about. What you're getting when I mention charisma and character, when you use that filter, you're getting charisma because you're filtering out everybody's character. So instead of getting quality character of a person, which is what you want, you're getting the charisma of what they're showing you, because you have this filter on that's only letting you see what you want to see, what closely relates to your idea of what this person should look like, or what this person, the qualities they should uphold. So make sure that you take off your filter so you get the character of a person. You see their true character. And not only them, you see theirs, they see you. So here I am with 10 tips to remove the filters in the workplace. These are going to be guidelines that are going to help you with new hires and also help you to engage your active team members already. So we'll get started with those, and if you have any questions, we'll be ready at the end to answer them. Keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. Can't stress how important it is to keep an open mind. Too many times during the hiring process, the approach is with a sense of dread. An outlook of, I've been here before, I know these questions, I know the answers that I'm going to get, and it's up to you to shake up the process. It's up to you to uncover that new talent and to get a change from the status quo. Go into the process expecting to find something new and interesting, something refreshing. Challenge yourself to seek out one uncovered talent from each prospect. Keeping an open mind will always leave room for new discoveries. Look for ways to strengthen character. Everyone has character. As a workplace developer, it's up to your advantage to discover ways to help strengthen good character. When your team is confident in who they are and the job they're doing, there's a natural overflow into the work environment atmosphere. People want to be around others who are uplifting and encouraging, not just those who glow for the moment. That is what's known as charisma. And yes, plenty of people have that too. But charisma can be tricky. It's not the actual character of a person. And so you need to learn the difference between character and charisma, because this will save you time, it will save you energy, and it will save you a lot of unproductivity. because the name of the game is productivity. Actively listen. Yes, we listen, and it's our job to listen. The question is, are we listening to respond, or are we actively listening? The difference is listening to respond is always on the defensive. It's always keeping our mind occupied to catch the trigger words that we may need to defend. Responsive listening encourages your ego response. When we actively listen, we're focused on what the other person is saying. We're focused on their body language, as well as what they're not saying. That may seem like a lot going on at one time, but active listening draws you into the person's comfort zone. They feel a sense of safety and will let down their guard a bit to share more of what may be going on with them. They can feel your interest and see your body language, showing that you are tuned into them at that precise moment. When a team member wants to talk, give them your attention and actively listen. Be sure to engage with your team. Being engaged with your team and having your team engaged with your vision is crucial as a leader. You can't expect buy-in from your team if your interaction and interest in them as a person and not just a product is limited or non-existent, especially for those that are of different ethnicities, genders, etc. In today's climate, when you have to be very careful of everything that you say may be taken the wrong way, you also have to be aware of intentionally avoiding someone out of biased fear. At the end of the day, people are people, and we're all social beings. Beings of a different anything doesn't preclude someone from wanting the same basic kindnesses or courtesies or interaction like anyone else. Inclusion is the starting point of engagement. Encourage differences of opinion. What an absolutely boring, ho-hum, bland status quo existence it would be if we all were exactly the same. If we all had the same thoughts, the same looks, the same this, the same that, etc. There's no creativity. There's no imagination. There's no spark of excitement. Ever. Because we'd all be the same. We all think the same, do the same, and have the same thoughts. So as I've mentioned before, no one certain group has the overall master plan on accomplishing, contributing, or succeeding. When filters are used to attempt to keep biased ideas of success limited to an expected look, that is a form of segregation. It takes all of our differences of opinion and ideas to produce a maximum useful output. Provide feedback for development. Once you've figured out that more differences is a good thing to have on your team for productivity, and you've gotten them engaged, then you've got to make sure to provide prompt, relevant feedback to keep their momentum and motivation for growth and development. Not everyone has the same motivations, which is why, as I mentioned previously, engaging with your team is important. How will you know what they may need to do an effective job? And I realize this may seem elementary to most of you pros, but sometimes the basics are what's missing in an elaborate, amped up new approach. Sometimes we forget to start with the bare bones, the basics, and we need to go back to those. So if you provide the right verbal tools as well as physical tools that are needed to succeed, you will have a productive team. Focus on competency, not conformity. Another filter that's used quite often and unaware is accepting conformity or complacency over competence. We all know it's easier to deal with the familiar than try to embrace change, but sometimes that change is needed to discover a new level of competence in people we may not have looked towards otherwise. Unintentionally eliminating or discounting people or their ideas because of an implicit bias can cause your company to miss out on productivity and growth opportunities. Remember, there is no one particular group that holds the patent on knowledge and ideas. Focus on abilities, not identities. When all of your focus is on the identity of a prospect, you overlook their abilities. This filtering based on what a person looks like is the most common bias utilized in the workplace. Decisions are heavily based on preconceived perceptions to a certain degree. The interview and hiring process lends itself to sort of like a pigeonhole. Usually, you have a certain set of questions to ask and you expect certain answers. And based on the answers, an offer is put forth or not. There's really not a chance to gauge their creativity, their abilities, or any of that sort in a situation. So what you left to do is basically select from what you know about them, what you see about them, that most closely identifies with your own perceptions and outlook, because that's all you have to go on. So you need to make a conscious effort that the person sitting in front of you or that you're engaging with see past who they are and see what they are offering your company or what they can offer your company. Make decisions based on fact, not fear. This is not saying you are physically scared of the person, unless you are. However, it's referring to being swayed by outside influences such as media, social discussions, and your circles of influence that you've been around. Allowing these filters from other people's portrayals to distort your seeing of the person means that you're not seeing the actual person. Rather, you're seeing through a filter based on what you've heard about a certain group. And then you're applying that to your prospect or your team. And when you do that, you're shortchanging that person that's in front of you or that you are engaging with. So you need to make sure that what you're seeing is paramount to getting to know that person, getting to discuss things with them, and finding out what it is they have the abilities to do and what they stand for. Remove emotional clutter from the decision-making process. This is an important slide. This is an important point. This is an important guideline, whatever you want to call it, because too many times when we're in a situation, we are reacting from our emotions. We are reacting from our feelings, and we interject those into that situation. Whether we have just seen a derogatory report about a certain group, or whether we have seen something that, or experienced something that lends itself to a bad feeling we got from it, or how it made us feel, then we project that onto the person that we're talking to, or interviewing, or trying to help develop, and you unintentionally apply that filter to them, even though they had nothing to do with that situation. So we need to make sure that you don't bring in your emotions into the situation, because it clouds your judgment, it clouds your actions, and it clouds your perception of whoever that person is that you're engaging with. So keep this in mind. Hidden treasures are within every organization. It's not just about hiring people that don't look like you. It's about getting to know your team. Help them feel wanted. Let them know that their ideas are welcomed. And let them not only know, but feel that they are part of the team. Stop using filters to sift through everyone that may not look like you. to keep yourself comfortable. Unmask bias in the workplace. So we'll take some time to have some questions that may arise, and I'll stop here and we'll get back with you with any type of questions that you may have that I may be able to answer. But thank you for taking the time to listen to me today, and I hope I've shared something with you that may spark an interest or may seem like, hey, I may be able to do something a bit different. And even if not, then maybe it's something you can pass on to somebody else. But I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.